Viewer discretion is advised.
Damian Moore here. For the past few weeks, I've been working on a piece covering Dave Rubin's interview of Larry Elder that was released in January 2016. Now, sometime after that, Dave Rubin was a guest speaker at Oxford University, and it was at that moment Rubin claimed that his interview with Larry Elder is what red-pilled him.
If you have seen this, I would send them to my video with Larry Elder, which I suspect some of you guys have seen. This is when I was still a lefty, and I asked Larry Elder, who happens to be black, he's a conservative, I asked him about systemic racism, and he basically beat me senseless. I mean, it is a violent video on YouTube. He beat me senseless with facts.
So it wasn't just his views based on some education he got. Maybe he read some Frederick Douglass, maybe he learned about black culture, maybe he had an assessment on his own beliefs and got a better education, a better understanding, and then did a reassessment of his views. Essentially, a black conservative grifter who was a product of affirmative action, a product of Ivy League education, told him typical stereotypes about black people, and because Larry Elder told Dave Rubin what he wanted to hear, which was the one thing that held Dave Rubin back from joining the Republican Party by his own admission and becoming a conservative. Rubin always said that it was the racist reputation of the party. But Larry, who is a black conservative, assured him that it was okay, that systemic racism is a myth. Despite saying that it was a myth, Larry then goes on to say that it was the black leaders and the black people's fault for why they are where they are. He even goes so far to victimize white men. But here's the icing on the cake. As Dave is sitting there with that stupid look on his face, smiling and nodding, thinking big ideas, one question comes from Elder. And Dave Rubin, as nervous as he is, gives a precise, accurate example of systemic racism. Now here's the thing, folks. All of that is for another video, and that video is coming out real soon. A blessing came from, I guess, Tim Ballard's Heavenly Father, maybe to help and guide him to the truth. Now, what does this have to do with Dave Rubin's interview of Larry Elder? You see, in the early 90s, Larry Elder had a column, and he did a fill-in on a small radio show in Cleveland. He was discovered by Dennis Prager. Yes, Dennis Prager of PragerU. After leaving the Young Turks, Dave Rubin was then employed by Dennis Prager.
I want you to continue to say you're a liberal because you're of great use to good values.
Well, don't worry, I'm not doing it for your use of me. I'm doing it for myself.
And just last week, Tim Ballard gives a shout out to Dennis Prager and PragerU. Let's take a listen.
Hey, I just want to give a huge shout out to PragerU. Congratulations on 10 amazing years. I've spent my life fighting against tyranny, fighting against human trafficking, and during that time I've been to the bottom of the waterfall, if you will, catching bodies, hopefully resuscitating those we can. But it's bad ideas that led to human slavery and modern day trafficking and modern day slavery. And when I see PragerU, I see you upstream. You are providing the solutions, attacking the core, the root of the problem, whose symptoms are things like slavery in all shapes and sizes that it comes in. And so I'm just so grateful to PragerU for partnering with us and us partnering with you to bring liberty to this world. And no one does it better than you guys. So huge shout out. Thanks so much. God bless PragerU.
Quote, Trump campaign officials led by Rudy Giuliani oversaw efforts in December 2020 to put forward illegitimate electors from states that Trump lost, according to 3 sources with direct knowledge of the scheme. Members of former President Donald Trump's campaign team were far more involved than previously known in the plan, a core tenet of the broader plot to overturn President Biden's victory when Congress counted the electoral votes on January 6th. Giuliani and his allies coordinated the nuts and bolts of the process on a state-by-state level. The Trump campaign lined up supporters to fill elector slots. They secured meeting rooms in state houses for the fake electors to meet on December 14th, 2020. They circulated drafts of fake certificates that were ultimately sent to the National Archives. Behind the scenes, Giuliani and Trump campaign officials actively choreographed the process. Washington Post, in their piece on this today, also has this important new piece of news. Quote, Vice President Pence's chief of staff, Mark Short, tells the Post that Rudy Giuliani and his associates forwarded to Pence's office letters arguing the Trump electors should be recognized in these states that Biden had in fact won. Mr. Short and Pence's legal team reviewed the unsolicited letters, but were not persuaded there was any legal basis to accept Trump electors who had not been certified by their states.
Marshawn Maddock, co-chair of the Michigan Republican Party, was one of the 16 GOP electors who submitted false electoral college documents to the National Archive in an attempt to give former President Donald Trump a win after the fact in Michigan. That's her Instagram photo from December 31st, 2020, delivering the documents to the state capitol with husband, State Rep Matt Maddock. Thursday, CNN released audio claiming to be of Maddock at an event last week, saying their efforts in the election were at the behest of Trump officials.
We fought for investigations into every part of the election we could. He fought for a team of people to come and testify in front of the committee. We fought to see the electors. The Trump campaign asked us to do that, and under a lot of scrutiny for that today.
I've been working on a recent story about the radicalization of Tim Ballard. For the past year, it's been no secret that Tim Ballard has been embracing white nationalism, jumping off the deep end with Trumpism. To date, there has not been a shred of evidence in regards to election fraud, and Tim Ballard continues to affiliate with people like this. Keep in mind that 6 years ago, Tim Ballard was disgusted at the fact that Donald Trump was elected President of the United States. But for the most part, over the years, Tim Ballard has remained largely apolitical. Keep in mind that this was a man who felt that Barack Obama was the only president in history cared anything about border security. In fact, the Obama administration had deported more illegal immigrants than any of the presidents combined. He actually built more border wall and more wall structure than Donald Trump. But for some reason, Tim Ballard started to become more and more radicalized and more of this devout, I would say, Trumpist Republican. Now, as we've reported before by Lynn Packer and I, ever since the criminal investigation, Tim Ballard has started to go off the deep end. He started to embrace a lot more white nationalism. He's been affiliated with a lot of radical right-wingers, such as Mike Flynn.
Somebody sent me a thing this morning where they're talking about putting the vaccine into salad dressing or salads.
Mike Lindell.
When I came out of my crack addiction and stuff, I'm going, I didn't think politics mattered.
I can't imagine what you'd be like on crack. You're so, it's just very, very high volume. Yeah.
Well, crack's a different drug than cocaine. Crack's very paranoid. When I was on cocaine, it's about like this.
And Lynn Wood.
Georgia officials are looking into attorney Lynn Wood for potential voter fraud. Wood was one of the loudest supporters of President Trump's baseless attempts to overturn the 2020 election.
Lynn Wood was one of the biggest pushers of the Trump election fraud conspiracies. In fact, this was the guy that was calling for the execution of Mike Pence and senators and congressmen if they didn't overturn an election by force against the will of the people. How anti-American is that? Now keep in mind that Tim Ballard has long been the source of a lot of human trafficking myths and fiction over the years, such as with Jim Caviezel, who he kind of let Jim crash and burn with the whole adrenochroming urban legend that he created.
The adrenochroming of children, look, where we're at right now, hopefully, we need your prayers. This film is, when Tim Ballard came down to Bogota, and we had about finished 2/3 of it.
A lot of what QAnon believes originated with what Tim Ballard had been telling people on the sidelines. Tim had long been connected to a lot of political figures. He's telling them a lot of this stuff. We will be covering this and so much more in the coming weeks on Tim Ballard's radicalization, his appearances at a lot of these ultra-right-wing white nationalist events. But right now, what was most alarming was his recent shout-out to PragerU. Now keep in mind, this is a man that adopted black children, black Haitian children, and yet he would give a shout-out to PragerU. This is a man that calls himself an abolitionist.
Women in the United States and in Western Europe are the freest and most liberated in human history.
Income inequality is actually a good thing when it's the product of a free market economy.
As for the charge of genocide, there was no genocide.
The United States still maintains the most generous immigration policies in the world.
When I hear young blacks talk about systemic racism, I don't know whether to laugh or cry.
Lynn Packer and I have been covering Tim Ballard and Operation Underground Railroad for years. And just when I think Tim Ballard couldn't go any lower, he seems to defy all odds. What makes this all the more horrible and disgusting is that Tim and his wife, Catherine, adopted black Haitian children.
Social justice doesn't only ask if the person is guilty. It asks about his economic condition. Is he poor or wealthy? Is he a member of a group that has been historically oppressed?
Here's how I would approach that issue as a statistician or a political scientist, or no, as a psychologist, which I'm not, is how abstract you handle the race thing. In other words, you start out, and now y'all aren't quoting me on this. You start out in 1954 by saying nigger, nigger, nigger. By 1968, you can't say nigger, that hurts your backfire, so you say stuff like forced busing, states' rights and all that stuff. And you're getting so abstract now, you're talking about cutting taxes and all of these things you're talking about are totally economic things, and the byproduct of them is blacks get hurt worse than whites.
I think the best person to introduce us to PragerU right now is none other than Mr. Beat.
I'm Mr. Beat. I teach social studies, and most of my videos are explainer type videos, meant to inform and educate. If I ever do make a video that's an opinion video, I let you know up front that it's an opinion video. I also get things wrong sometimes, but I do my best to get things right. My agenda is the truth. Some YouTube channels have a different agenda. PragerU, which is short for Prager University, is an organization that creates short animated videos to promote a conservative agenda. So what does PragerU's version of, quote, conservative look like? Well, their website says they believe in, quote, economic and religious freedom, a strong military that protects our allies, and in the religious values that inform Western civilization, also known as Judeo-Christian values. Anyway, the conservative radio talk show host Dennis Prager and his colleague Alan Estrin created it in 2010 to fight what they perceived a, quote, liberal bias in the American education system. It's propaganda. PragerU is straight up propaganda. Their mission is not to inform and educate, but to indoctrinate. And honestly, I'm okay with propaganda. I'm totally fine with that. The problem with PragerU is that they present themselves as a legitimate educational institution. On their YouTube channel, they state, quote, PragerU is an online video resource promoting knowledge and clarity on life's biggest and most interesting topics. We gather some of the world's best thinkers and distill their best ideas into free 5-minute videos on things ranging from history and economics to science and happiness. My point for reading that is that I've found a lot of people don't know they make propaganda videos. Unsuspecting folks may think they are simply an educational channel when they are not. When I first came across them, I know I thought that. And PragerU is highly influential, especially to younger folks. Their videos have billions of views. They also recently started a program to try to get their videos in more social studies curriculums. Craig Strazzeri, the chief marketing officer of PragerU, said thousands of educators have already signed up, adding, quote, ideally every school in America would show PragerU videos in the classroom on a regular basis to help educate the next generation. Educate, like I said, more like indoctrinate. If you Google PragerU debunked, you'll get thousands of videos and articles debunking PragerU videos. Often, however, the videos debunking PragerU are like 30 minutes long because of how much bullcrap the debunking videos have to call out.
And since Tim always likes to talk about human trafficking and equate it to slavery,
you are providing the solutions, attacking the core, the root of the problem, whose symptoms are things like slavery in all shapes and sizes that it comes in.
Vash, take it away for us.
PragerU, A Short History of Slavery. I thought maybe I could open, because I always think about the first few sentences, you know? And I'd say something like, my guess is that this video's goal, the purpose of this video, is going to be to reassure a white audience that they have nothing to feel guilty over. Which, by the way, they're going to do by lying and misrepresenting history substantially. And I thought maybe I have to wait for that to be proven the case, but look at the description. Slavery didn't start in 1492 when Columbus came to the New World, and it didn't start in 1619 when the first slaves landed in Jamestown. It's not a white phenomenon. Now, I just want to be clear, by the way, in my life, in the whole of my life, in all the spaces that I've been in, I have never once heard anybody say that white people invented slavery.
Vosh is absolutely correct. Hundreds of times I've heard conservatives and Republicans say white people didn't invent slavery. In reality, nobody is making this argument.
And now for a brief...
And of course, because this is a PragerU video on a race subject, we bring out a black conservative, which they do every single time. Despite conservatives always saying that, you know, this liberal identity politics is counterproductive, they will do this relentlessly every time. All right, Candace, let's go.
Brief history of slavery.
Uh-huh.
Here's the first thing you need to know. Slavery was not invented by white people.
What? Again, the first point, I have never in my life heard anybody say that. I have never heard that said from anyone. Not in media, not in my classrooms. Conservatives are always saying, all the time they're saying this. They're saying, you know, they want you to believe that white people invented slavery. Or they sort of imply other people are making that point by saying white people didn't invent slavery. Nobody's saying that. Who said that?
See, the focus in reality is systemic racism. Racist Republicans in 2022 are talking about who invented it. It's a typical Fox News tactic. They say things like white people didn't invent slavery. It's to make their audience believe that this is the core of the argument. The right loves to invent their opponent's arguments and things that are not true to say that they debunked them, except in reality no one ever said it. And they're still talking about the men who betrayed, committed the greatest act of treason and terrorism against this country, and they want to celebrate them as heroes and put up statues and memorials of them. Because Fox News and consumers of right-wing propaganda stay in their safe space, this distorted reality begins to emerge. This is why there's so much stop and pause on videos by Sean Hannity and Tucker Carlson. They play it for you slowly, sometimes even splicing riot footage in the middle of it, and then interpret and explain how you're supposed to perceive this. Second, the purpose of saying this is to absolve themselves of their own personal racism.
It did not start in 1619 when the first slaves came to Jamestown.
We know.
It existed before then.
Yes.
It did not start in 1492 when Columbus discovered the New World.
No one believes this.
When the intrepid explorer landed in the Bahamas, the native Taino tribe hoped that he would help them defeat their aggressive neighbors, the Caribs. The Caribs enslaved the Taino and, on occasion, served them for dinner. Slavery existed in...
Now wait, quick follow-up question. How'd that work out with Columbus?
Excellent question, Vosh. There it is. PragerU, what we call whitewashing, how things turned out for the Taino. What did Columbus say about them? Well, he said, they will give all they do possess for anything given to them, exchanging things, even for bits of broken crockery. They were very well built, with handsome bodies and very good faces. They do not carry arms or know them. They should be good servants. Father Bartolome de las Casas, a Catholic priest, was a defender of the Taino. He wrote in his 1561 multi-volume History of the Indies, there were 60,000 people living on this island when I arrived in 1508. Over 3 million people had perished from war, slavery, and the mines. Who in future generations will believe this? Sorry, Father, you're right. Who will believe it or even care?
Who was Robert E. Lee? Statues of great historical figures, like Robert E. Lee, are being torn down across America. Here are some facts about Lee that remind us why his statue should remain. Robert E. Lee was connected to George Washington through his father, Light Horse Harry Lee, Washington's cavalry commander. And his wife, Martha Washington's great-granddaughter. Lee's home at Arlington House was just 10 miles from Washington's Mount Vernon. Today, it is the site of Arlington National Cemetery. After 30 years of military service, Lee led U.S. Marines to crush the attempted slave rebellion by radical abolitionist John Brown in October 1859. 21 co-conspirators had seized a federal armory, and all of them were killed or captured, including John Brown, who was tried and hanged for treason. deemed slavery a moral and political evil in any country, but considered it a greater evil to the white man than to the black race, since blacks are immeasurably better off here than in Africa. Opposing secession, Lee foresaw no greater calamity for the country than a dissolution of the Union. But when Virginia seceded in a close vote, Lee resigned his commission. Despite offers to command Union forces, Lee opted to organize the defense of his native state.
Do you know what the seceded states were up to for the 4 months before Fort Sumter? Chillin'. Yearning for freedom from Yankee tyranny. Well, not quite. January 4th, 1861. Anticipating Alabama's immediate secession, Governor A.B. Moore ordered the state militia to seize federal property at Mount Vernon Arsenal, Fort Morgan, and Fort Gaines, effectively putting Mobile Bay in Confederate control. January 6th, a group of armed men barged into the federal arsenal at Apalachicola, Florida, and demanded the keys to the armory. January 10th, weeks before Louisiana's secession, state militia seized the U.S. arsenal at Baton Rouge on orders from the governor. The following day, they seized Forts Jackson and St. Philip, which guarded the mouth of the Mississippi. January 13th, armed Mississippians took forcible control of the unfinished federal fort on Ship Island in the Gulf. January 24th, Georgia militia seized the Augusta Arsenal. February 8th, acting on orders from the governor, Arkansas militia volunteers seized the federal arsenal at Little Rock and escorted federal troops across state lines. March 6th, the Provisional Confederate Congress authorized President Davis to raise an army of 100,000 men for 12 months service. April 12th, South Carolina militia fired on Fort Sumter. April 15th, President Lincoln called for 75,000 volunteers for 3 months service to suppress the rebellion. Call me crazy, but all I see is Southern aggression.
After 4 years as Confederate commander, Lee became an icon of reconciliation upon his surrender. As president of Virginia's Washington College, he favored education for freed slaves but opposed their right to vote. Lee died from a stroke in 1870 in is buried beneath Lee Chapel in what's now Washington and Lee University. His legendary warhorse Traveler rests in a plot nearby.